Hi, this is Andy, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 6 of the Wilderness Therapy and Residential Treatment Center Journey podcast.
Hi, I'm Lori. Thanks for joining us today. Last episode, we spoke with Mark Barentine of Evangel House Christian Academy. He shared how a religious-based therapeutic location can be an effective solution for some children and their families. It was a really interesting episode, and I hope you'll tune in if you haven't already.
Today, I'm really excited because we're going to speak about mindfulness-based therapy and how it works in residential treatment settings.
Yeah, I'm really excited to learn more about this today and have our listeners learn a little bit about it too.
So today we're excited to be talking to Josh and Maureen White, the co-founders of Red Mountain Sedona and Red Mountain, Colorado. Welcome, Josh and Maureen.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys. We're so happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Glad you guys could join us. Why don't we start like we usually do and ask a little bit about your background and how you ended up where you are now?
Sure.
Great.
Well, we met in graduate school back in 1999, and we were friends for many years before we got together as a couple. And the backbone of our friendship, I think, was a shared vision for a therapeutic healing community that would include mindfulness. And so our life partnership and our friendship and our raising of a child and our having these businesses together all really stems out of that shared vision. And it's come together in a pretty beautiful way.
Mm-hmm. So we're both clinicians. We're both therapists. We're both mindfulness teachers and meditation teachers and longtime practitioners of mindfulness and meditation, and really both had the dream to have programs, like Josh was saying, to help people. I had a dream of having a program for young women. Josh had a dream of having a program for young men. What do you know? We found a way to do it together. So it's literally a dream come true.
That's awesome.
That's great.
Can you tell us, I'm sure our listeners are chomping at the bit, as are we, in terms of just a description about what mindfulness-based treatment is. Can you help us there?
Yeah, I'd love to. Well, first of all, as the clinician, as the practitioners, we practice mindfulness so that we're able to notice all of the little things that are happening when we're in connection with someone. So as we're sitting with a client, I may suddenly feel very tired or get a headache or something like that. So I'm just tracking all of that, tracking the whole thing. And my mindfulness practice has given me the space to kind of, check out my inner world and then oscillate into, what's happening with the person. I'm not like just thinking about me, but it's just mostly out here, but then like, oh yeah, I'm feeling this now. And oh yeah, I'm feeling this now, which I may or may not bring up with them. So then there's that part. And then there's the part about teaching them and reflecting for them their own natural mindfulness and building upon that. So I said to a client the other day who had a little bit of kind of got mad about something that I felt like he was pretty justified in getting upset about this. And I said to him, look, this is the kind of thing that would have sent you into a spiral for weeks before. And not only would you have been self-destructive, but you would have tried to destroy everything that are around you. And you're not doing that. And that's just mindfulness, because he knew, oh, I'm having these feelings. I need to take space. And it's just that simple, just interrupting the impulse and before it can come to action. Just creating that space and making a bigger space. So you just notice the impulse and then you never act out.
Well,
maybe not never, but.
And you touched on, for the clinician, the way that we train our staff is to be attuned to what's happening for them so that they get the information about what's happening with the student. And that's pretty cutting edge. Most programs don't do that. And also, you touched as well, Maureen, on the benefit for the student, or the payoff for the student, is that over time that they're learning mindfulness and they're receiving mindfulness-based therapy, as both of those things are happening together, there is this transformation that happens where they might still have the issues that brought them to treatment, but those issues become way more workable because they can see, as you said, they can see it, you know, when it's just a little spark, as opposed to when there's a raging inferno going on. And then it only takes a little water to put out a little spark. So just learning choice is one of the biggest things that our students get from the way that we approach it. Because so often as human beings, we find ourselves in non-working behavior and we don't even necessarily know that we were upset. So, you know, it's learning, oh, I'm getting a little bit upset. Oh, I'm wanting to go into the non-working behavior, whether that's whatever, rage, alcohol, drugs, eating, avoiding, isolating, whatever it is. Okay, so I'm feeling this way. I have a choice. Do I want to go into the non-working behavior, or do I want to risk it and do something different that maybe I don't feel like I have as much control, but I might also have a much better outcome? So that's in a nutshell what we do and what we teach our staff to do and what they teach the kids to do.
That's awesome. And that's so interesting. So would it be fair to say that, I mean, in a lot of therapeutic environments, there's an opportunity for people to have awareness and learn how to cope and react, and that's part of the therapy. It sounds like, you know, to use an analogy, it sounds like you kind of have a way of teaching it that's kind of on steroids. That's very proactive.
Yeah.
So that people are really attuned early on. Would that be fair? And would that be a fair analogy or assessment? And then can you give us an example about how you work with how you work with a student to help them get to that point?
Sure. Yeah, well, I appreciate that's a very pithy way to put it, you know, is that it is usually the one that I use is jet fuel, but I like steroids too. You know, it's taking established therapeutic procedures that work and just adding that extra kick, that the mindfulness piece, if you're learning it from people that know what they're doing, which I would venture to say that we do. I mean, we've been empowered by established teachers to teach, and we've both been studying, you know, mindfulness techniques for between 20 and 30 years each. So the trouble with mindfulness is that if you don't know what you're doing, you can cause more harm than good. So having legit teachers that actually have been trained in how to take a troubled person's mind through its own landscape and help them learn how to map it so that they can make better choices is very potent. Trying to do it if you don't have the training is dangerous. However, I think that the way that we do it and the way that the other teachers that work with us do it is very helpful, and it does provide that extra kick. You know, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, which is kind of the standard practice that every therapist that you go to practically is doing cognitive behavioral therapy, which, just as the name infers, is sort of, you know, you're using thoughts and behavior together. So when you add in an awareness of how your thoughts influence your behavior, and then how your behavior influences your thoughts, which is really what mindfulness is, it's about using meditation to get to know your mind better and then bring it off the meditation cushion into your life. The Buddha actually taught two separate things, meditation and mindfulness. So nowadays, with the term being so de rigueur, it kind of gets lumped in with everything else. The meditation and the mindfulness are kind of part and parcel, but really the way we've been trained, it's two different things. You meditate so you can learn to be mindful when you're not meditating. And so that's a very potent tool for young people that are trying to change their lives, because generally they're really smart. They tend to be passionate. They tend to be emotionally sensitive. They get flooded. We call it flooded, you know, overwhelmed internally very quickly. And we like to say this gives you a surfboard so that you can ride those waves, and you have a rudder on your surfboard that can direct you where you want to go. And so instead of feeling like your life is constantly overwhelming you and you're kind of a victim of circumstance, you actually have an opportunity to work intelligently and intentionally with what's happening. So anyway, I know you also asked for a case study. Did you have any on your mind?
Oh yeah, so many, but one pops up right away. We had this young lady, I think she graduated a year and a half ago or so. She came to us, chronic hard drug use. And She'd been living in her car, you know, doing what she needed to do to survive and to get her drugs, and brilliant. I mean, just brilliant. She could not sit still, couldn't sit still. So any group that I ran with her in it, I would just give her permission, and I won't use her name, obviously, but I would just give her permission to leave anytime she needed to or wanted to, as long as she was quiet and didn't like swear at anyone as she was doing it or anything like that, you know? So just over time, I created this huge corral for her of safety, so that she knew if she was getting elevated in any kind of way, it was up to her to pay attention to that. And there were times when I would be like, hey, you know, and use her name, do you need to take a minute? If she started standing up and fidgeting and stuff, I would be like, would you like to step outside? And just kind of, you know, redirect her to let her know that she had all the space there was, and she didn't have to sit in that group or in meditation or whatever. She just had an open door policy. And I didn't know if she was going to make it in our program. I really didn't. I mean, every single weekend she would talk about signing out. She would talk about going and using. And every Monday there she was, you know, she just stayed. She just stayed. And I honestly don't know how she did it, going through the cravings and the intense things that she was going through. But you know, over time, oh, and then in meditation, she would sit right next to me, and we always have dogs we take our dogs to work. So in meditation, our little dog, who's really kind of a therapy dog, he's not trained as that, but he acts as a therapy dog. She would just hold him and pet him the whole time. And so she could stay in the room. And so that was how she was able to stay in the room. And so over time, and she was with us for about a year, her nervous system just calmed down so that she was able to develop some discernment, some awareness, and she was able to watch her own mind. Now, it took time. There is no magic bullet. It's just time and awareness together create this sort of, you know, give us the space to do the natural healing that needs to occur, especially for the brain when her brain was, you know, not in great shape. And this was, again, a brilliant, brilliant woman. But just having that space and those sort of regulatory, you know, off-gassing opportunities helped her get to the point where she could actually sit and practice meditation. And so she came back to visit before she moved away. She was around a lot, you know, I'm still in very regular contact with her. But she came back to visit, and the dog wasn't there, but she just sat and she, you know, rang the gong and did the whole meditation, was able to just sit there. And afterwards she was like, Maureen, these kids don't know how to meditate. And I just laughed and I was like, do you not remember what you were like? And so that's just, you know, one example of someone who, I mean, there are literally hundreds of them, but that's just, you know, one. I mean, she's just such a survivor and was really able to.
Really nice. A real success story, huh?
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That's impactful.
Yeah,
and
really.
And a really good demonstration of how your system works so effectively. Thank you.
Why would a family, when they're looking for residential treatment for their kids, choose a program like yours rather than a traditional program? What would lead them to you?
I think that's a great question. And, you know, the first thing I would say is I know that you have a lot of listeners who are parents who are either having students in treatment or have had students in treatment or are thinking of sending students to treatment. And before answering your question, I just want to say that I want to say thank you to those listeners who are in that position, and thank you for trusting programs like ours with your children, because that is the biggest, form of trust that you could ever have. And I know the two of you have had that direct experience. And so I really want to acknowledge the two of you and all those families out there who've been through this, because it's really hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard to make that decision and to decide.
It's life-changing. It's life-changing for everybody. It is a turning point in your life when you do that, no matter your situation. It really is.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think a lot of it, aside from theory and aside from what makes our program unique and different, which, you know, we will address, but I think there's something intangible in that process. And of course, we're in that process right now with a number of families that are trying to discern whether to send their young adult to Red Mountain, Sedona, or their teenager to Red Mountain, Colorado. And, you know, I think so much of it boils down to that trust. You know, do they feel connected with us? Do they feel like we get their kid? Do we feel like we can help their kid get where they need to go? Do they feel like we're ethical and we're going to deliver what we're saying that we're going to do? Because unfortunately, there's a lot of charlatans in our industry and a lot of people that are not in it for the right reason and are not coming at it from the right place, or they are coming from a good place, but they don't have the training to, you know, really deliver a quality outcome. And so,
and there are lots of great programs too. I mean,
well, yeah, there's
sure,
also
dozens
and dozens of amazing programs that we're lucky to be affiliated with through NATSAP and other organizations. And
but if somebody was considering a regular program or a typical program that had CBT and good therapies, and they said, well, there's this mindfulness one, what additional benefit might I get? That's make me want to consider it. I think that's what we were trying to hit on.
I can tell you that, and I know that we talked about being concise at the beginning, which is not necessarily my strong suit, but I actually have a pithy answer in mind, which is Maureen kind of pointed to in her story about the case study, us being able to meet someone where they are.
Yeah.
And I really do think, I mean, there's some amazing programs out there, and goodness knows there's things we can always improve on and do better. But I really don't think there's very many that are better than we are at meeting someone where they are and getting their buy-in and helping them feel cared for and connected. And that really boils down to the mindfulness that happens amongst our student body and amongst our staff, where we will get our ego out of the way and meet someone where they are and be creative to help them just take that little step each day toward their health, because it happens very incrementally.
Yeah, one of the natural outcomes of mindfulness and meditation practice is compassion. It's just natural, you know? Mm-hmm. And we're really, I don't want to say we're able to have that. We just have that for our clients. Like, we really care about them in such a deep way. And it's not enmeshed, and it's, you know, clear, and we know that they're there for specific reasons. And, you know, as you're saying, we do get really creative with people, and we do really meet them where they are, and they feel respected.
And there's just a top-down culture of that respect and of that awareness of our own stuff, because the work we do is really hard. Like, anyone that's in this industry would tell you that. And so if we're on top of our stuff, and when we get triggered by a student, we can work with that skillfully so that we can help that student. And in a program that doesn't have mindfulness, you're going to see a lot more reactivity. You're going to see a lot more arbitrary rules and decisions. You're going to see kids leave treatment more frequently than they do with us, because they don't feel that connection and that respect that comes naturally out of a mindfulness-based environment.
How do you measure the benefits of your program? Like, how would parents be able to measure the growth in their child in this mindfulness-based program?
I know we spoke when we first got introduced. Ooh, hold on, I'm going to put it on pause for a second. We got a barking dog.
Can you hear the dog? So tell us a little bit about how benefits are measured from this kind of a program, and how parents would be able to, you know how their child is making progress as far as the mindfulness.
Absolutely. Well, of course, there's the intangible, which we won't go down that rabbit hole because we've got hundreds of anecdotes we could tell you, but they certainly will see a difference in how their student reacts to things and takes in information. We've had, hundreds of examples of, he pauses before he reacts, or, she told me she needed to think about it and get back to me instead of blowing her top, or, he was nice to his brother. He hasn't been nice to his brother in a year, So there's a lot of little things like that. But also, we are part of the National Association of Therapeutic Schools and Programs, or NATSAP. And NATSAP has been doing a research project for many years, which we take part in with a company called Petrie Consulting. And also we do some individual work with Petrie Consulting outside of the NatSap study. And it's all about tracking a student throughout their stay and tracking their symptomology. And because we intentionally give the students things to work on, not that we're trying to agitate or aggravate them, but our programs are a little less linear than a lot of programs, and they're a little less clean, is what we like to say, in the sense that we have an ever expanding container. And in addition to mindfulness, our programs are known for being much more community based than a lot of programs. There's not as much of a bubble. So as the students are moving throughout the community and interacting with their families and going on home visits and working and going to school and doing things in the community, they slip into some of their old behavior, or they get triggers that they might not get in a more isolated environment. So what happens in our outcome studies is that we see that their symptomology over time goes down, and measuring different scales of emotional distress, anxiety, depression, whatever it is. But what we see is it's sort of like a stock that's trending downward. Like, we want our student symptomology profile to look like a crashing stock, where it's going down, but it's got these little bumps in it along the way. So you'll see these places where they spike up, and we've gotten to the point where we can spitball about what phase they were on, or about what point in the program they were in when you see those little spikes, because we know that's when they either got a lot more responsibility and freedom, so they got a little freaked out by that, or they had been in that phase for quite a while and they mastered it, so they start getting agitated and needing some more responsibility and some more challenge and some more freedom. So anyway, that's just a long way of saying we have a lot of anecdotal evidence, and we have a lot of statistics to show in those metrics that over time. And we also do at graduation, 1 month post-grad and 6 months post-grad, to show, are the changes holding once they're out of our environment? Because of course that's the ultimate goal.
That's a great description. Yeah. Very interesting answer.
We interviewed John Hall, who was the executive director at NatSap, and he told us a lot about that, and it's great you contribute to that so much. How can you, as a follow-up question, can you tell us what you described is awesome in that it talks about how you can track an individual student during the process, and understanding how they're feeling and how they're reacting and how they're progressing, and then even afterwards, which is even more important. But how are you able to use it to be able to say, okay, this new student came across our, came to our location, and they have similar traits or similar path, or how are you able to use that data to help you with new students that come in?
I think a lot of it is just, it's become very predictable, and rather than it just being anecdotal, we actually have stats to back it up, and we can show the new kid kind of where they are and their reported symptomology and what the averages are. So when they see that, it's very validating for them. And that's, again, part of the mindfulness approach, is to do a lot of validation and a lot of recognizing of where someone is, as opposed to where they quote unquote should be or where eventually they will be. It's about, well, this is where you are right now. And it's normal, given the particular stresses and pressures you're under, whether that's making a transition from wilderness therapy or a primary setting to our setting, or whether it's getting ready to go home, or whatever it is.
Do many of your students come directly from wilderness programs, or do you have some that enroll having never been to wilderness?
Yeah, we have both. Most of our students have been to primary treatment or wilderness therapy. And we do also occasionally take students who are coming from home, particularly if they have prior treatment episodes. So if it's not the first time they're dipping their toe into the pool and into the waters of therapy and, figuring out what's going on with them, then we will consider them. And we have a few right now actually who are doing incredibly well, and they're very motivated and that, but we do love getting clients from wilderness, because most wilderness programs, so many wilderness programs, the ones that refer to us, just do incredible work. So
you have two beautiful locations. One is in Sedona and in Arizona, and one is in Colorado. and one serves young adults and the other one serves adolescents.
Mhm.
Can you tell us about your two Red Mountain locations with a little detail about it, about who you serve in those locations and
How many students maybe?
yeah, how many
Yeah.
students, and just an idea for the listeners about what the locations feel like and are made up of?
Sure.
So,
Why don't you do Sedona?
yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Our Sedona location, we have a really unique situation in that we don't have a main campus. We're built into a neighborhood. So we have 3 office buildings and they're sort of scattered. They're in the same little business area, but they're,
Office park.
yeah, it's a little office park. And that makes it sound way more industrial than it is. There's nothing in Sedona that's industrial at all. But we're sort of scattered. And then we have 3 apartment buildings across the street. So our students live in apartments, and we have apartments that are designated, and we own the whole apartment building. So there's no, or all 3 apartment buildings. So there's no one there who isn't Red Mountain. One of them is for people who identify as male. One is for people who identify as, or the other 2 are for people who identify as female. Everyone gets their own bedroom and their own bathroom. That's very unusual in treatment. We really, and then they have a full-size kitchen and a shared living room. So they're sharing an apartment with one other person.
And those are for young adults?
That's for young
Right.
adults. Yeah. Sedona is for young adults, 18 to, our oldest client that we've ever had was 30. But, you know, it really depends on if they have a family or if clients have families or whatever. But, you know, the mean age is sort of 23.
We like to
20,
say you have to
23.
be a very mature 18 or a very immature late 20s for it to
Yeah.
work. You know?
Is it
Because
all residential, or is anyone from the community allowed to be a part of your program if they don't live
All
there?
residential.
All
Yeah,
residential, okay.
everyone lives
Well,
in the,
unless they've graduated,
well, right.
if
Yeah,
they've
if they've
graduated,
graduated, we have an
they can do-
alumni program.
they can do outpatient benefits.
Yeah.
And
So-
what's the benefit? Why did you think having their own room and bathroom was an important part of your offering?
Well, you know, we attract pretty sensitive, somewhat introverted clients. And so we're really, really into neuroscience. I mean, it's funny because we're also mindfulness based, but we're really into neuroscience and are very interested in students being able to regulate their nervous systems and have access to their parasympathetic nervous system so they can have higher order thoughts, they can process things, they can process trauma, they can process memories, have empathy for people. And to do that, they need to be in a fairly relaxing, non-stressful environment at least some portion of the day. So having their own space for most people, not everyone, is the most relaxing living situation that they could be in. And then being able to control their own food and, you know, they grocery shop and all of that. So we have about 40 students at Red Mountain Sedona, and we have about that many staff as well. We have a very sophisticated clinical team. We can handle really, really sophisticated, complex clients.
Smart clients.
Yeah, really smart with complex histories, major trauma treatment and substance abuse, dual diagnosis. You know, really, there are very few rule outs for us unless someone is, you know, violent or has ways of expressing themselves that pose a threat to themselves or others. And you know, we have a really fun environment. One of the things that's really, really important for us is that our students learn to have fun in a sober, healthy way, because, you know, this whole like, oh, I'm partying when you're really self-destroying, you know, it's a paradigm shift to think about having fun in a different way. And it's pretty wholesome, and they have to learn to do that. You know, we really have to retrain their brains to know how to have fun and to know what's actually fun and what actually feels good and healthy for them. So they have therapy, you know, every week with a primary therapist, groups every day. and lots of fun activities, yoga, meditation, martial arts, art, hiking, biking, adventures on the weekend, adventure therapy on the weekend. And that could be, you know, we could have one group in Flagstaff skiing and one group in Phoenix at an art museum. So we really cater to all of our students and what they want to do.
Or off-roading in Sedona.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
There's an awful lot of that. One of
Yeah.
our holy sacred cows is you have to wear your helmet, because we have a lot of students skateboarding and riding dirt bikes and mountain biking and so forth. And it's like
horseback riding and like
you know,
all kinds of things.
Beautiful setting. Yeah.
wear your helmet.
We have a lot of golf. We have a lot of golfers and a lot of, you know, really outdoorsy. We're kind of outdoorsy with walls and electricity. You know, that's Sedona.
And both environments are very conducive to that, because Sedona is such an outdoorsy environment. And Greeley is a larger town than Sedona. It's a college town.
Outside in Colorado.
Yeah, for the adolescent program. But it's also right on Colorado's Front Range. And so you literally could live your whole life there and not climb every mountain and not go on every trail and not explore every lake. I mean, it's just, there's just vast. And so everything that Maureen described, in addition, all of our students at Red Mountain Sedona either have jobs or go to school as well. And so they're mixing and matching all the activities that we offer, in addition to the schedule that they're building for themselves with things that they're doing that have, once we help them get their job or help them get into school, if they're having issues with school or at work, we will of course help them with those issues. But we also want them to build relationships and feel like they have a life outside of treatment as well, because we're kind of that in-between space between complete isolation of wilderness therapy or rehab or primary treatment or hospitalization and being on your own.
Or sober living. We're not sober living. And all of our clients have both a primary therapist for the inner work, and that person's at least a master's level clinician, and a case manager. So the case manager is for all the external work, for the executive functioning, which so many of our students struggle with, for life skills, for, you know, money management, getting a job, finishing school. We have an academic advisor who works with us, who we've known for 13 plus years. He's amazing, fantastic. So we really do, we can take a student to, you know, from not having graduated from high school to get their GED. And we've also had students who are working on their second master's degree. So a whole gamut, of levels of academic interest and motivation and all of that. And, you know, we've had people who've gotten their first job. One of the cool things about Sedona is that we have a labor shortage. So pretty much anyone who wants a job here can get a job, even if you've never had a job before. So we've had people who've gotten their first job, you know, they go out with their case manager that day and they come back with a job. Or we've had people who've worked in doctor's offices, worked as vet techs, you know, worked at these sort of like not your first job kind of jobs. Archaeologists, yeah, park rangers. I mean, we've lived in Sedona for so long that we know so many people and have really good
we had a just very quick anecdote, and then I'll answer about Colorado and move on. But we had a student who came here and he kind of just didn't really want to work. And I said, well, what's the issue? And he said, well, I'm a trained butcher. I'm an experienced butcher. I don't need to go work at Subway. I'm not 18. I don't need a first job. I said, oh, really? And I called up the owner of the grocery store here in the part of Sedona where we live. And I said, hey, do you need a butcher? He said, yeah, I do. I said,
we have one.
I said, I got one for you. And so he didn't really know what to say at that point. So the next day, new job as the butcher.
He was pretty happy.
So he was very happy, but
confused.
You know,
he was very confused.
It's just another example.
Surprise!
Students will throw up these resistance, you know, or these ways in which they're trying to get in a power struggle with you, and we just kind of don't go there with them. It's just like, well, what is it that you want to do, and let's make that happen. Let's manifest it. On the Colorado side, all of our students are also in school. One difference between the two programs is in Colorado we have school on site. And as Maureen was describing, that our Sedona facility is in town and is really, you know, it doesn't have a set boundary because we're in the town. So there's other businesses around our offices. There's other residencies around the apartment buildings that we own. So we're able to really control the day-to-day of, who the students are interacting with and their safety, but also their felt sense is that they're not in a bubble. And I think it's very similar in Colorado because,
which is the adolescent boys program. So
correct. Yeah, and we're kind of pregnant because we've got a girls program that we're conceptualizing and that we're hoping to launch in 2021. But when we started Red Mountain Sedona, we very quickly made it co-ed because we just felt that was more real world and more what we wanted to do. And with the adolescents, we started with boys, and we'll do a girls program as well because we know our model works with teenage boys and girls, and we actually have a lot of personal history and background working in a girls environment and bringing mindfulness into another program that we used to work at with girls. So we know it works with girls, but for a wide variety of reasons, doing this co-ed program with minors is just fraught. So we haven't done that. But anyway, there will
sounds like in Greeley having a more isolated campus given the younger age.
Yeah, I wouldn't use the word isolated, but it's definitely more self-contained. So like the campus, everything is on the campus.
Yes, that's a better word.
School, therapy, recreation, everything's on campus, but the campus is right in town. So the students, again, don't feel isolated, and they're off campus multiple times a day, whether it's going on adventure, going to the skate park, going to the Funplex, which is the gymnasium and mini golf and swimming pool area that's a mile down the road, going to off-campus 12-step meetings, going to the movies, going out to eat, all the things that they're going to be doing when they're home, when they're finished with us. One of the differences in the two forms of work is that the vast majority of Red Mountain Sedona students go on to live on their own when they're finished with us or to college. Vast majority of Red Mountain, Colorado students go home to their home environment, or some of them go on to college as well, depending on their age. So the task is a little different, and the work with the family is a little different. With a Red Mountain Sedona student, you're trying to help the family allow the student to differentiate and support them in the student differentiating from the family system and establishing their own life and having a relationship with their family. But it's new and it's different because it's not based on all that strife and fear and drama and conflict that was going on when they were in the non-working behavior. But it's really supporting that family in the emotional work that's hard to do. It's hard to have your student leave home anyway, even if things have gone well. But to have them leave home and to trust them when things have not gone well, that's really hard. So we do a lot of family support with the therapist and with our family coach. But in Colorado, the work is a little different because it's about preparing the student and the family to come home and have things be different than they were before. So the work is equally important and equally challenging. It's just got a different flavor to it. So, and again, the mindfulness is very important and helpful in just being able to track and notice. And we have a 15-year-old too. So
he's not 15 yet. He has a couple more days.
He's going to be 15. By the time this posts, he will be 15. But anyway, we have a 14-year-old who, by the time you hear these words, will be 15. And it's weird. Listen, we're parents too, and we go through the same thing that all parents go through. It's like, where do you set a boundary? Where do you draw the line? Where do you play the heavy? Where do you kind of let something go? Where do you try to get buy-in? Where do you just tell them how it is? All those things. It's difficult. And so again, when your student has given you reason to worry about them even more than a parent is hardwired to worry, then it's like, well, what do you do with that? Yeah. And so we really invest a massive amount of energy in supporting our families and in helping them. And one of the things we say to the students sometimes, if a student is feeling like, well, I'm done, I don't need to be here anymore, sometimes we'll say, you know what, you are pretty close. There's still some work we need to do, but you're pretty close. But you know what, your family is not ready. And some of this is like, if you go back, if you try to have a relationship with your family, when you change so much through wilderness and being here, and they haven't caught up yet, So we want to give it a little more time so that they can do that.
Yeah. We're big advocates of parent therapy.
Yeah, and I know
one of the biggest things that we learned was attunement.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. That's right. That's That's the ticket.
Well, and I wish they taught attunement in school because, you know, it's kind of a basic thing like math that you just need to know. You just need to know to succeed as a human being, and but particularly as a parent. And it's something that unfortunately is not widely known. So, I mean, but if you know attunement, then you know mindfulness. Attunement is simply being aware of what's going on with me and what's going on with you and what's going on in the space between us, and recognizing that fundamentally there's no separation between you and me. So whatever the energy is, we've got to work with it skillfully together and not take these fixed positions and be in conflict.
Yeah.
You know, that's what it's all about. And just like the students need to hear that over and over, families need to hear it over and over too. Because, you know, again, families have, well, you know much more than I do about how the brain works, but families need, they need to heal that part of the brain that's gotten so overstimulated and so traumatized that it's like, they're in that, is it the parasympathetic, just constantly?
They're
all
in the
time?
sympathetic.
They're in the sympathetic. I knew
Yeah.
that. I was testing her to make sure that she was paying attention on her training. But they're in that sympathetic, heightened fight or flight all the time. And, you know, it takes a while.
It's exhausting.
Yeah, but it's also habitual, and it
It's
takes
habitual.
a while to learn how to kind of unplug yourself from that reactivity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, and you get unplugged from it when your child is removed from the home environment. But then whenever that is, a year later or whatever, and your child comes back, there is scar tissue like ever before. Yeah. I mean, it took a long time for us to fully relax and trust again after all the therapy we'd been through. It was still really hard.
Sure.
And honestly, for our daughter to trust us, because as she was becoming more and more depressed and anxious, we became tougher parents because we were worried about her safety, right? And worried about her going in the wrong direction. And in some cases we were hurting her more than helping her because we weren't acknowledging what she was going through. And
we didn't understand it.
And we didn't understand it, but now we know much better for sure. So we're going to wrap up. We appreciate the time. Can you share with the listeners how parents can best reach you if they're interested in learning more about either of your programs?
Absolutely. Well, if you have questions directly for us, I'm Josh at redmountainprograms.com.
And I'm Maureen at redmountainprograms.com, and it's MAUREEN at redmountainprograms.com. And then our admissions.
We also have, admissions information, which is info at redmountainsedona.com or info at redmountaincolorado.com. Or if you want to reach our admissions folks directly, I'll spell both their names because you won't get it right if I don't spell it, because I barely get it right even when I spell it. STACEY, Stacy with an E, at redmountainsedona.com, or Aleshka, I already got it wrong. ALESHKA at redmountaincolorado.com. And we'd be happy to hear from any of your listeners. And
What about our website?
Is your website redmountainsedona.com and redmountaincolorado.com?
Yes.
Yeah. And if you are interested in learning more, the websites I think are very informative, and we're always happy to talk with families. We are really into not hard selling what we do in opposition to what others do. We're really into just sharing our information, sharing our passion. Our program's not for every kid, and our programs are not for every family, but if it is for you and if it is for your student, it's really unlike anything else. Because when there's been that repeated recidivism and relapsing into the same behavior or sliding into the old behavior over and over and over, and the family and the student reach a certain fatigue level, even if the student is not necessarily gung-ho about mindfulness, if they're just open-minded about it, it can really be the game changer.
So how would people reach you all? Because this will be on our YouTube as well. So
people can reach us at www.parentsjourney.net, or go find the podcast on whatever whatever app you use for your podcasts, and it's the Wilderness Therapy and Residential Treatment Center Journey podcast to find the podcast as well.
Terrific. You guys, I can't even imagine your journey. I just am so thankful that you're doing this. It's such a beautiful gift that you're giving so many people. I feel emotional about it and just very, very touched. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been,
Yeah, go
it was a long journey, as it is for everyone. And it wasn't really till after, when she was back home again and parents would start calling me, friends would tell other friends they had that they knew that I had been through this, and they would call, and I started talking to people, and then more and more I was spending time on the phone helping other mothers or families, you know, navigate this, and this just sort of evolved from it. So it was Andy's idea based on some of the prior discussions and what we'd been doing, and it just sort of
And what we
happened.
went through.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's
So-
awesome. Thank you for doing
Yeah,
this
thank
for
you.
families that I know appreciated and needed. And thank you so much for reaching out to us. And
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Having
Thank
us
you very
on.
much, Josh and Maureen. We really enjoyed listening to
Great.
you and learning from you. I knew nothing about this, and I'm very thankful for that knowledge and education today, because it was very interesting. So for families that are interested in mindfulness-based treatment, this will be very helpful. But either way, it was very educational. And our next episode will be with Frank King. He is a well-known speaker and advocate for suicide prevention. Given many children who are struggling with their mental health consider suicide, and during the COVID pandemic, more than 1 in 4 of our total population have thought about this. It is an important topic to address.
Thank you for tuning in. Parents, remember, take care of your children and empower yourself with information at Parents Journey.
thank you both so much.
Thanks, you guys.